but we're going to go deeper than that. We're going to really understand what I mean when I'm talking about masculine and feminine in the workplace. So before we even get started, one thing on my channel, just so you know, I talk about leaders progressing into exceptional leaders. And with that being said, they're moving into this next level of leadership, which is awesome for everybody and very much needed these days. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Christina Hawley. I am a performance coach. I have my own coaching company, and I help create cultures that thrive, work cultures, and really get leaders to unlock their potential and have a better understanding and how to show up in their work environments so they can excel and everybody wins at the end of the day. But today, what we're talking about, we're going to talk about masculine and feminine, which I'm really excited to talk about, to be honest. I am really trying to get people to understand that we are all a mix of masculine and feminine. So this is not a gender thing. This is really about our masculine traits and our feminine traits, which we all have them. And in order to really be in alignment with your truest self, you really have to understand that you embody both. But we have a tendency of like leaning into one side, and we do that because usually our environments will support that kind of behavior. So so we want to fit in, so we'll lean into like more masculine behaviors or more feminine behaviors. But for today's discussion, what I'm going to mention is really about, sorry, my camera is kind of acting up here. What we're going to talk about today, which I think is going to be great, is really the understanding of what our environments are asking for, how we're showing up in those environments, and is it really promoting more masculine traits or feminine traits that are within us, and especially within the workplace. I would say, I've been in the workplace for, in corporate for 25 plus years in senior HR leadership roles. I've written a leadership book. I have a very good sense of what I've seen in the workplace in the past little bit. And there's definitely a more of a leaning towards the masculine in our corporate environments, in business in general. And we're going to talk about why. So the first thing I will say is that, masculine traits, like I said, we all have them. I was in corporate, I was more leaning into my masculine traits, right? And a healthy masculine trait would be really focused on the results, very disciplined, very grounded, and making sure that you are results oriented. So in business, you're always going to be results oriented. That's why you're there. However, there needs to be a balancing out in how you're engaging with your team, right? So it's great if you're only going for results, but you have members of your team that are there, which need to be supported and encouraged. So they're moving in the right direction. So everyone has a goal to move towards. Now, that what I just described to you is healthy masculine. So healthy masculine is really the idea of being present, not distracted, not being judgmental, being very honest and logical. Like it is such a great grounding sensation. So when you have leaders or organizations that are based in that foundation, that's pretty amazing. Those are the kind of traits that you're going to want, like to have deep integrity, humbleness, like really, really important stuff. However, those masculine traits can be wounded, just as feminine traits can be wounded. So I will go into that. So wounded masculine, and I want you to think about workplaces that you might have worked in over the years, or maybe if you're currently in something right now, if there's something there that really stands out to you around, ooh, yeah, I've seen this before. So the idea that you might have leaders that have a fear of failure, or they need to constantly be right. So if you've been in a work environment where there's people there that are, I hate quotation, kind of know-it-alls, they always need to be right, they nitpick, and they're really not supporting the business the way that you would want them to, or their leadership traits. So that really to me says that they're more in a wounded, like masculine, like there's an opportunity. This to me would be trigger points, an opportunity to do some deeper work. They may come across as cold or distant, might be, narcissistic, believe it or not. Sometimes we do have leaders, and I struggle a little bit using the word leader and narcissistic in one, but we definitely have had work environments where people, the narcissist will thrive because the ego is constantly being fed, right? Like, oh, more accomplishments. Yes, you're amazing. Yes, you're the winner. And the ego loves that kind of environment. So you want to be mindful that your environment, your work environment, is not encouraging this kind of behavior. Also, there is the aggressiveness. So I don't know if you've seen this in business, but I have over the years, where sometimes there is just this aggressiveness, where just do as I say. I don't want to hear what your feedback is on the topic. And it's just trying to push through their personal agenda. I like to call them the bully. Sometimes they do exist in the workplace, but that's because those individuals have some work to do. And it's just to be mindful, if you've seen those kind of behaviors in your leaders or in your work environments, then that means that there's some opportunity to be done there, or to be worked on. If you've seen people that are very critical and judgmental, I know throughout my history of working, I've seen some interesting things. I even had senior level leader come and be like, almost like berate the person that they were working with, and saying that the work was mediocre and it wasn't good enough. And when you start speaking like that, that to me tells me more about you as a leader, rather than encouraging this positive, a reinforcement to try and lift people up rather than knock people down. But to me, that is a wounded, I'm using the word wounded versus healthy, but you can just see that there's some opportunity in that kind of environment or in that kind of leadership style. People have been definitely using the word toxic quite a bit these days. And when they do use the word toxic, I want you to be mindful that these are the kind of traits that they're talking about. If you have leaders in your organization that are really not supporting the growth of your people, or they're getting so fixated on results that they could be knocking people over or crushing people, I call them a bull in a china shop, then you really need to start to be aware. The other one uh, that I've seen, and this would be like wounded again, is really the idea of not taking accountability, right? If you're in a healthy state, you're going to own it. Like, yes, I made a mistake. Yes, no problem. Let's see how we can fix it. But if you're a leader, or if you have leaders around you or people around you, they're always defending themselves and on the attack. That is a sign that there's some opportunity to do there. That is not a healthy environment to be in. Sometimes I think what happens is that we've just accepted those behaviors for so long, and when we do that, that doesn't make it right. So now it's really about the work that I do is really to help organizations, one, identify that you may have this in your culture, or that as a leader you might be carrying some of this stuff. So and we've only talked about the masculine at this point. We haven't even gone into the feminine. So, and I'm using masculine, feminine, not as a gender thing, but I think it's very important to have this conversation because our workplaces have more of that masculine feel in them. And what the shift is now, I would say post COVID, is trying to get more of the healthy quotation feminine traits into these organizations, so then you can have the balanced approach, which is the most healthy approach, because you do need both of them. You cannot just operate on one side. um, you know because you have people in your organization, you really need to know how to connect with them. And I will tell you this, throughout my history, 25 years, like I said, um, there's definitely a change, right? So we've had it where people I've seen back not too long ago, like, leave those emotions at the door. We don't deal with your problems. You just come here to work, that kind of stuff. And that is not going to work anymore, because what I've seen, and this is the work that I'm doing, which I think is extremely exciting, is that the integrated employee is coming into play. The integrated employee is a balanced approach from the healthy masculine and healthy feminine. They know who they are, and they are more in alignment with their true self, and they bring that into the workplace. And I'll tell you, this actually can be a very big benefit for your company if you have these types of leaders in place, because they also know how to self-regulate, self-manage, because they're connected with themselves. They're authentic leaders. They are exactly who you want in your organization if you're looking for connection or inspiration, and really having an overall positive work culture. Okay, so the other part that I will be referring to is the feminine. So think about workplaces in general, at least probably in the last 5 years, if whether or not you've really seen a lot of feminine traits. This is what I'm saying. Corporate to me is much more masculine traits. If you're going to break it down from masculine, feminine, I'm just trying to simplify the process. Healthy feminine would be considered as being very supportive, being authentic, being compassionate. Also, there's creativity, innovation. There's a whole different way of listening and sharing with the team. It is not, it's very collaborative. And that to me excites me, because what that means is that everybody has a voice. Everybody is contributing into the overall result. And there's many different ways with that can happen, but the fact that it is encouraged rather than it's my way or the highway, which is very one person has all the answers, I'm the smartest person in the room. It's very like that is much more ego driven, where it's only one person, whereas feminine is much more collaborative and open and exciting, because you never know who's going to have the next great idea. And the one thing that I've always said, and I absolutely love this, is that nobody owns an idea. I think that that is a false narrative that we put into place, that one person owns an idea. But that is based on the old mindset as to the corporate environment. I'm the smartest. I know all the answers. Well, the reality is, multiple people will touch an idea before it becomes something absolutely spectacular. When an idea comes out, it's usually one of those things, it's just starting. It's an inception. It's like it's a concept. It doesn't come out bright and shiny. Multiple people will touch it. And when people are excited to be a part of that process, then you have magic. Then you have really great things, great results that will come out into your business. So that, believe it or not, guys, is feminine traits. That feminine energy, that feminine traits that are in that collaborative space where multiple people will touch ideas before they unfold. Now, there has been a lot of discussion recently around corporate empathy and what that looks like. So I'll tell you this, corporate empathy is very much needed these days. And I feel like sometimes we think we understand what that is, but we don't really practice it. So corporate empathy is really about being compassionate, being a compassionate leader, being compassionate to your colleagues, being aware of how things are going, taking the extra step to have those conversations, doing the check-ins, doing active listening, and really being present. That is empathy. That is really having a better sense of what's going on. And in fact, and it's quite interesting because, you know, intuition is a big part of that. And I know companies in general are like, oh, no, no, intuition. We don't want anything to do with intuition. But I would argue that you actually need intuition in your business. Um, you need data and intuition, right? So it's the mind and the heart. You need the blend of both in order to be highly effective. It's the masculine and the feminine. And when you understand that, you will be much better equipped for things that are going on in your business. It's not only one way, you actually need a little bit of everything. So, to go back to that, we talked about the healthy feminine. Now I want to talk about the wounded feminine, right? We talked about the wounded masculine, where it starts looking a little bit toxic. And I would like to remind everyone, I am not talking about gender. I'm actually talking about how it's showing up in you. So I could have had wounded masculine traits because I was very driven, and the idea of taking extra steps to kind of do check-ins and stuff sometimes didn't come natural to me. I had to actually sit back and be like, okay. And now I've revisited it and I'm in a much more balanced state, and that's why I want to talk about it, because it's really important. So let's talk about wounded feminine. Okay, so tell me if you've ever experienced any of this in a workplace, okay? That you've had a leader or you've had someone around you in your work environment that has demonstrated these traits. They're insecure, they're manipulative, they're stuck in victimhood. So think about people, and I hope that you haven't experienced a leader who's done something like that. But imagine, I know I've seen it and I've had to help people navigate through it. But the idea of these toxic, and I will use the word, these toxic behaviors, these toxic folks that circle around us. So think about if you have a leader or someone who's manipulating in your work environment, how is that supposed to feel? That's not going to be great. That is actually going to be horrible, because how are you supposed to be creative? How are you supposed to trust? How are you supposed to do all these wonderful things in your organization? So if you have people around you that are doing that, then you need to, and we can talk about that after, but you're really going to need to manage that. If you have people around you, let's say, use the example, that are stuck in victimhood, they're always talking about how hard it is for them. They're never ever able to move ahead. They're sitting there in this space where they're constantly playing the victim. They never take action, and they constantly are telling you how it's so much harder. But the problem with that trait, I'll tell you, is that it's very draining if you have people in your environment that do that. And that's why when it's not healthy, you could really be causing yourself damage, right? And those around you, just so you're aware. Or they are people pleasers to the extreme, right? So they're sacrificing themselves in order to do the result, but then they're so, they're on the verge of burnout. Well, that's not healthy either. So these are like wounded feminine traits, right? In the beginning, we talked about the masculine, but if you have these things in leaders around you or people around you, your work environment is not going to be comfortable. I'll tell you that. Then, oh my goodness, then you have the people, and I do a lot of work with helping individuals with this, that there's no boundaries. They just continue and they go on, and they talk about stuff around being stuck. Like it's kind of like they just talk about themselves over and over and over again. And when they do that, that's when they they drain you. So I'll tell you, this in itself is all toxic stuff, and it directly impacts your organization. So when you understand that it's impacting your organization, um, why aren't we dealing with it? Right. So even, okay, so organization is one part, but what about yourself? If you have these things, these traits within you, and you're not balanced, and you're falling into some of these um, wounded traits, let's say, the ones that are not going to allow you to excel as a leader, then you have some work to do and have some awareness around it. And then, if you're not happy around the work environment, then we need to kind of dig deeper. The one thing I will say is that when you start to understand the simplicity of masculine and feminine, or mind and heart, right? How we need to function with both, all the rest starts to fall into place properly. It just changes the dynamic completely, because you are showing up better as a leader. You have the awareness, you are in alignment with who you are. But I think when we don't understand that sometimes we haven't even created the space for our best behaviors to come forward. So if we are in work environments that are supporting toxic behaviors, like being extra aggressive, or being critical and judgmental, or being manipulative or insecure, or stuck in victimhood, then you're not really going to get, you're only going to get a fraction of what you could, from your folks, right? Because they're dealing with all this other stuff instead of really being happy and fully engaged. There's statistics that show that people are like 25% more engaged, more productive when they are engaged and they like where they work. So, it's interesting coming at it through the masculine and feminine trend or trait, because when you do, you can see that um it's, there is some poor behaviors that need to be addressed. And when we kind of lose the sight, like when we stop thinking of it from a gender perspective and we merely look at the traits, we can really see, if you have a blend of both, you can have an amazing work environment. So let's do this for fun. I'm just going to put it together, the masculine feminine. And this is the work that I'm doing, is like trying to get organizations to really see corporate empathy is something that's really important, in order to offset some of the masculine, that has been going on. And when we understand that you can have both, you can have great results and still have a happy people while you're doing it, then that's really a win for everyone. So can you imagine, let's imagine this work environment, okay, where you had leaders that were present and they weren't distracted. You had leaders that were non-judgmental and they were committed, to the greater vision or purpose to the organization, or they had deep integrity and humbleness. They were focused and disciplined. They're supportive and encouraging. They're honest, logical, and accountable. Sounds pretty awesome. I'm not even done yet. What if these leaders also were compassionate and authentic, and they were creative and intuitive, or they were collaborative in creating community, and they're interested in listening and sharing? Wow. Like if you had all of that together in one organization, it would be amazing. You are creating the space for success. Now, let's go even a little deeper. If you have leaders that encompass both of those traits, both they're balanced in masculine and feminine, or they're balanced in mind and heart, your business will excel. Your corporate environments, your cultures, your work cultures are all based on your leaders. Your leaders live and breathe your culture. If you have poor leaders in your environment, guess what, guys? It's going to backfire. And you can pretend that you're not really dealing with some of that stuff, but it will catch up with you. Um, if you have leaders that are not supporting your company values, then you're doing a lot of work and you're not maximizing on the overall result. So I just want to say thanks. I thought I would hop on today and talk about this and share my thoughts on it just from a masculine, feminine perspective and understanding. Let's put gender aside and really understand that we all have these traits within us. And these traits they're amazing. They have purpose for on both sides of it, right? You need a blend of both. And, as they say, it's like the yin and the yang. You need both. If you really want to excel in business nowadays with your leadership, 2023, this is what needs to happen. Because if not, then you're going to be trapped and you're not going to be able to keep people the way that you want to keep them. And I don't want that for you. I want you to really have engaged and happy workforce because it's going to be good for business. And I want you to love doing what you do, right? I love what I do. But it's also having a better understanding, not to get caught up in the rat race. And just because organizations were set up a certain way before, that old school, I call them old school, more traditional style leadership was rewarded, encouraged. It doesn't mean that it's needed nowadays. We actually need leaders who are going to shift and be much more progressive, and they will be better aligned with who they are, and they will have a balance of both. So I just want to say thank you for the time. I'm really excited that I got to speak on this topic. I will definitely be talking more about it, and I will chat with you soon. Oh, and also, I'm going to try and do these every Thursday just to, make sure that we're consistent and we can talk about relevant topics. But if you have any suggestions, please comment. Let me know what your thoughts are because it's very helpful for me. This is a new process to go live and talk about this stuff. But it's an important message that I think leaders need to understand, that you don't have to look externally for those answers. You actually have all those answers within. And once you start understanding what you have to offer, then you can show up, not following a script, but actually being you and doing all the great things that you do. So if this resonates, give a like, give a follow, subscribe to the channel, and I hope to talk to you soon and have an amazing night.